Okay, hello everyone. This is Mr. Fuller. This will be our last video for our series in volumes of a cylinder for grade 8s here. So, plus pictures of some cylinders here. They're kind of everyday. So, what we need to know for the volume of a cylinder. So, every cylinder will have a height and a radius or a diameter, but we'll go through that in 1 second. So, our formula that we need to know for the volume is equal to pi, so not apple pie, but pi times height times radius squared. So again, us mathematicians are lazy, so we write it as V is equal to pi, that's a Greek symbol for pi, times h times r squared. So pi, there's a button on your calculator, and you can put that in, but if you don't have the button on your calculator, the button or the actual number that we can use is 3.14. That's going to be a rough estimate. It does go on for much longer, but for our purposes, it's going to be, you can use 3.14 and still get the right answer. So let's go ahead and try an example. So, determine the volume of the cylinder below. So again, we'll start off with writing our formula. So volume is equal to pi times height times radius squared. So we can go ahead and plug in the numbers here. So volume is equal to pi times our height, which is 10 centimeters, times our radius, which is 6 centimeters, all squared. Okay, so I'll go ahead and put this in the calculator, and I'll use the actual pi value. So pi times 10 times 6 squared. One of the things that we might want to do here is make this into a number first. So instead of 6 centimeters squares, when we square that, we actually get 36 centimeters squared. And the way that works is because our squared has to go to the centimeters as well as the 6. And then once it's that, then that's our area. So if we put this all together like this, pi times 10 centimeters, then we'll get a total number of 1,130. Well, it's 973355. So let's go to 2 decimals. Let's go to 97. And our units for this again is going to be centimeters cubed. Okay, so along with the other volume lessons that we've done, the way we're going to mark this is again one for our formula with the correct values, and then our final answer. So the step in the middle here, right here, you technically don't need this in my class to get full marks. I would suggest to do it so you can get keep your brain organized and keep that all well. One of the mistakes that students might run into is if we put it into our calculator and put squared, if we go pi times 10 times 36 squared, it might end up going, well, pi times 10 times 6, and then it squares the entire thing. So we'd get a much larger number, which is wrong. So one thing to be really careful about is I would suggest putting this square in first to get the 36, and then you can't, or you won't screw it up your answer that way. Okay, let's try another example here. So how much popcorn can you fit in this popcorn container? You may assume the container has the same diameter at the top as the bottom. So in real life, the bottom looks a little bit smaller, but for our purposes, we're just going to pretend it's a perfect cylinder. Okay, one of the things is, let's start off with writing our formula down first, because that's the best way to go. We get a mark for that. So volume is equal to pi times height times radius squared. So the next thing we notice here is we actually don't have a radius. They don't give us a radius. But I think what we learned from last year is that the radius is actually half the diameter. So it's the direct center here, which makes this 5 centimeters. And this is important that we use the radius. The formula says radius, but in some cases we could take out a 2 and it would work, but when we square things, it can get kind of messy. So we always want to use radius. If you see that it's the diameter, just divide it by 2 right away, and most of the time it will give you a nice number to work with still. So we can go ahead and now plug in the numbers for our second mark. So volume is equal to pi times our height which is 30 centimeters, times our radius, which is 5 centimeters squared. Okay, so I'm going to do this step that I told you to do in the last example first here, so it's we can see it a little bit easier. So volume is equal to pi times 30 centimeters times 25 centimeters squared. And I hope you guys can see the difference between these two. I guess it might be easier to see is we're kind of lazy as mathematicians, like I've said before, but to think of the 5 centimeters all squared. So we have to both square the centimeters and the 5, and then 5 squared is 25, and centimeters squared, well, centimeters squared. So hopefully that helps you out there. So if we go ahead and put this into our calculators, we get our pi times 30 times 25. We get our volume is equal to 2,356.19449. So we'll go to 2 decimals, and again our units is going to be centimeters cubed, because that's the volume. So hopefully this helps out you with your question, and we'll talk to you another time.